Hey there, and welcome back to XLADV here on YouTube. Sorry it's been a while since we talked last. I've been living in Medellin, Colombia on my trip down to South America, and I just got involved in a full-time gig and got busy. But here with a review, more in-depth review of the Dunlop TrailMax Mission. So this is my second set of TrailMax missions. The first I had on the bike from Mexico City to San Jose, Costa Rica. I definitely took them off too early, but this is my second set now, and while I've done some dirt, I haven't done a whole lot until recently. A couple weeks ago I took a 4-day trip of some pretty extensive off-road trails here in Colombia, and I really put them to the test, and at this point I feel I've got enough experience with them both on the street and in some difficult dirt to give a more comprehensive, in-depth review of these. Okay, so I did this trip on some pretty serious dirt, and I aired down to about 28 PSI, 28 to 30 about. And my first observation was with any kind of lean in a corner, these side lugs here are really going to hook up. I had a hard time even trying to break traction. So when you're in a straight line straight up, it's a different story, but once you try to corner and get that traction, you're really going to find they hook up extremely well for a 50/50 tire. So on some loose rocky uphills, I did notice a little bit of slip in the rear wheel here. It wasn't that bad, and when I let off the throttle it was fine, but that's kind of one of those compromises you have with any 50/50 tire. But let's talk about that a bit. I found that a lot of times the manufacturer's designations of what percent street and dirt are not only a little bit arbitrary, they vary from region to region, but they may sometimes be more about marketing and what segment they want to be in. The 50/50 segment is the biggest segment. So what this tire is called a 50/50 tire in the US, and when it first came out I was like, I'm not so sure about that. But then once I started to look at the size of these cleanouts on the tire, they are rather large, and they've got these back blocks here for clean out, and the side lugs especially, those are going to be really good in dirt cornering. They're going to be good in sand and mud. That's what gives you the traction in sand and mud, is the side of the tire. So after trying the tire in the dirt, I'm like, what, these are actually pretty good. And I've tried other 50/50 tires. I'm like, these do what they say they'll do. But keep in mind, in Europe they call these a 70/30 tire, 70% street, 30% dirt, which I completely disagree with. The Anarchy Adventure is a 70/30 tire, and there's this tire beats that tire, hands down in the dirt. And the Anarchy Adventure is just not a tire I would ever buy, because it just doesn't offer any kind of off-road traction. And not on this trip did we experience any mud, but I have done mud before on these, and they perform extremely well. This one particular long uphill, muddy, wet, slimy climb, I got up fine. The tire did its job, and I think that was helped a lot by my traction control and just the years of experience I've had riding. So that's what I have to say about mud. And what really blew my mind actually was on our trip back, we took mostly some fast, twisty pavement with little traffic, and the conditions were warm and dry. And I was with part of the group that wanted to split off and go a little faster and get home a little quicker. And let's just say we rode a bit spirited. Now I usually ride pretty conservatively, and I don't really push the bike in the corners, but this was like that one time I've really pushed myself to another level of riding, of course in a safe manner. But I gotta tell you, these things hook up like nothing on pavement, and they're so smooth. I mean, I was leaning all the way over, scraping pegs. I'll show you the scrapes later. Getting virtually no chicken stripping here, and I was just blown away. We stopped for lunch. I'm like, oh my God, that's the most fun I've ever had riding a motorcycle. It was honestly very, very impressive, and it's not something I've experienced with other 50/50 tires. at all. You will not find pavement performance like the TrailMax Mission and other 50/50 tires, I promise you. And my PSI for the road was what the manufacturer recommends. It was 42 rear and 36 front. I think that's a little high, and I'll tell you from experience with another 50/50 tire, at those pressure recommendations, you just do not get the kind of traction. I've always had to air down those other 50/50 tires a little bit because I find myself skipping and traction braking in corners when they're pumped up that high. So that gives you an idea of, you know, the kind of compound here and the stiffness and the grip of this tire on the pavement. Now, in terms of longevity, these tires only have about 1,000 miles on them. My first set I got about 9,000 miles on, and they still have plenty of tread. But I got to tell you, I just had this German couple on two BMW 650s, and they put their TrailMax Missions on in Montana 16,000 miles ago, and they still look fine, and they say they'll probably get another 5,000. I don't know about that for me and my style of riding and the weight of my bike. You know, I've heard kind of an average of 9,000 to 10,000 miles on a rear on the TrailMax Mission, but that's exceptional. That's a great value. That's a great tire for, you know, the commuter or someone who's going to take a very long trip. I'll give you a look at the front here. Yeah, the front is more obviously showing no evidence of chicken stripping here. I really got all of it. No cupping either, interestingly. But the front I did find twice, it washed out a little bit on me in some sand, which, you know, is known to happen if you're on a big bike. It immediately righted itself though, and didn't give me too much to worry about. You know, it's not going to handle like a D606 up front on my 990 in Baja. I mean, that thing's going to hook up. But it was fine. I just felt I had to back off a little bit, and it did quite well. So one of my buddies on this trip named Juan is on a KTM 1290, and he's running the Mitas EO7 up front. And he was riding in front of me on the way back on all these fast, twisty curves. And I found he was really, you know, not committing to the curves. He wasn't leaning in. And I talked to him at lunch. I'm like, hey, are you a little tentative rider in the curves normally? And he said, well, you know, he says, I just don't trust these tires. You know, I don't feel I can lean them over as much. And then I saw that he had the Mitas E7s. I'm like, yeah, you know, that compound's a little harder. And but obviously I had a completely different experience. I was leaning all the way over, scraping pegs, and you know, having complete confidence in these tires. So that should give you an idea of how this is gonna perform for you as a 50/50 tire, both on pavement and in the dirt. And yeah, lastly here, I'll just give you an overview of the bike. It's Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro 2020 edition. I got the Rig Gear Hurricane saddlebags on the back, which I really like. I put a Alt-Rider rear luggage plate on, which I really like. It's got the little attachment here for my my Rotopax gas. And then I got a Sargent custom seat, which is also heated just like the stock. Turns out the Sargent seat is about 2/3 warmer than the stock. Got my tank bag here, also for mid-gear. And what else did I do? I got the double take mirrors. I got the quad lock anti-vibration wireless charging mount. I've got a Trailtech Voyager GPS here. And I've got the Barkbuster handguards. These are a must for any big bike, as well as the mirrors. And then of course I have some auxiliary lights from Cyclops Adventure Sports. All right, just a couple things before I go here. So I have to be honest with you, in terms of off-road traction, I would say that the EO7 and the Motaz GPS are a little bit better in the dirt. However, that comes at a steep cost. You know, I was telling you about my friend who couldn't corner, and I got to tell you, when I switched the GPS out for these TrailMax Missions, it was like a whole new world. Those other two tires, the technology just seems to me a bit more agricultural. You know, they're a little bit more rough. They feel rough on the pavement, and that's kind of why, just in my opinion, I think this TrailMax Mission is probably more a 60-40 tire, 60% street, 40% dirt. I had zero issues with it on this trip. I'm happy with it. I probably wouldn't go riding in Baja or Mojave with the TrailMax Mission, but that's what the TrailMax Raid is for. And I'd invite you to check out our podcast on Apple or Spotify. I actually have some good podcasts on there about tires that are our most popular, and I got a couple more coming up in the near future. So stay tuned. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.